Thank you so much for joining me. This is Kathy, and today I'll be creating a card using the Pretty Posies stamp set and the tin roof stencil from CAS-ual Fridays stamps. I started out by placing a piece of Canson watercolor cardstock into my stamp platform. I treated it with my anti-static powder tool because I plan on doing some embossing. I stamped the images using Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink. And I did stamp the images twice just to make sure that I got a really nice crisp impression. After I stamped the images, I coated them with Hero Art's Detail White embossing powder, and I melted the powder using my heat tool, and I did have that heating up off to the side to minimize the amount of warping on my cardstock. For the coloring, I decided to use my Arteza real brush pens, and when I do watercoloring, I like to do the embossing because the embossing powder creates little wells so the color stays right where I want it to stay. I also knew that I was going to be fussy cutting these images, so the embossing powder actually kind of helps me cut a little bit more clean as well. For the leaf, I added a little bit of clean water directly to the cardstock within the embossed image. Then I came in with the light green brush pen and added a little bit of color. Then I used my paintbrush to spread that color out a little bit. Then I moved on to the largest flower. For all of the coloring, I did the same thing by going over the image with clean water and then adding in the color with my real brush pen. So as far as CAS-ual Fridays stamps go, this is the first time that I've placed an order with them. I am a member of a group called Crafting of Hue on Facebook, and they have a bunch of different sponsors, and they usually feature a sponsor of the week, and then they'll also have a sponsor of the weekend. And a lot of the sponsors are really very generous and offer discounts to members of this particular Facebook group. I'll be sure to link to the Facebook group in the description below. And in addition, I will of course have all of the supplies that I used as well as all of the colors that I used. Anyway, with the flower, after I had put down the first layer of the pink, I did use a damp paintbrush and spread that out. And it ended up being a little bit lighter than I wanted it to, so I went in again with my brush pen just to darken up some of those areas. The one thing that I didn't do was wait for it to dry before I added in the color, so it didn't get as dark as I wanted it to, but I go back and I fix that a little bit later on. I know that I've mentioned it before, but I really do like the Arteza real brush pens because watercoloring is definitely not one of my strengths. It is a look that I really like, but I tend to be very heavy-handed with water. And even with the real brush pens, you can be heavy-handed with water and still end up with a nice watercolor effect. When I first got the Arteza real brush pens, I played around with them a lot, and I did try a bunch of different cardstocks. I tried Bristol Smooth, I tried the Canson watercolor, I tried the Nina Classic Crest, I tried Fabriano, I think it's called Fabriano linen paper or something to that effect. And of all the cardstocks, the one that I prefer to use is the Canson watercolor cardstock. And that's just me. I think it has a lot to do with how heavy-handed I am with water. I know that I use too much water, and the Canson watercolor cardstock, being that it is watercolor cardstock, can handle a lot of water for people like me who tend to use way too much water. They're also really very forgiving. So if I ended up using too much color, I could always add clean water and dab up the excess with a paper towel. If I go outside the lines, which I think I did on one of these little flowers, I was able to clean that up with just clean water and dabbing that up with a paper towel as well. They can also be layered, so you can add more layers of color as long as you wait for them to dry completely, which is one thing that I'm not really very good at doing. Now, all of a sudden my voice probably sounds really funny compared to about 40 seconds ago. I have tried to do this voiceover for about 3 days now, and I kept sneezing and coughing, and then it dawned on me that I was probably getting a cold, which I woke up yesterday, Friday, and yes, I have a cold. So with that being said, I am going to do something that I haven't done in a really long time, And I'm going to play some music for you to enjoy while I finish up the coloring so that I can save my voice a little bit. And I will be back a little bit later just to share with you how I finished up the card. After I was finished with all of the coloring, I set that aside and then I grabbed a piece of 80-pound Neenah Solar White cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I used the Tin Roof stencil from CAS-ual Fridays and dried marigold distress oxide ink and a makeup blending brush to do a little bit of stenciling. I used a pretty light hand. I didn't want the whole front of the panel to be stenciled, so I worked from the top down, kind of fading off towards the bottom. Next, I put that panel into my stamp platform and stamped the sentiment using cement gray hybrid ink from My Favorite Things. And for this card, I decided to actually finish the inside of the card. So I finished stamping the sentiment, again with My Favorite Things cement gray hybrid ink, and then I used the distress oxide in dried marigold to stamp a few flowers on the inside of the card. I had run this stenciled panel through my Gemini Junior with a large stitched rectangle die and adhered that to the front of a top folding A2 size note card. Off screen, I had fussy cut the images that I had stamped and colored, and I did do a couple of extra leaves and I did one extra of the medium size flower. So here I'm kind of playing around with the placement of all of the images, and once I'm happy with where I have them, I start adhering everything down with liquid glue. To finish up the card, I added a couple of the fortune teller flat back beads, and that's it. That finishes up my card for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And hopefully in the next video, my voice won't sound like this. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.